Hank Azaria, you are the star and I guess kind of co-creator of the new IFC comedy Brockmire, which started as a skit you did for Funny or Die. I'm wondering, where did the idea of this character come from, and what was the process like of turning this little skit you did for an internet comedy thing into a full-length series?
Well, it's a good question. The idea always was, I mean, it's an idea I've had in some form or another, arguably since I was a teenager and started imitating this voice, the Jim Brockmire voice, what I think of as the generic 1970s baseball announcer voice. And over the years, I started to form the idea of, do these guys always sound like this as a comedic premise? Do they sound like this at home when they're fighting with their wives, when they're having sex with their girlfriends? Do they dirty talk like this? Then I thought it might be funny to have a guy like this have a meltdown and still retain this kind of golden-throated way of expressing himself. Harry Shearer pointed out to me at The Simpsons years ago that guys like this can get away with whatever they want. They can say anything they want as long as they give the count afterwards. So that got thrown in. I mean, we did the short like 10 years ago, 8, 9 years ago. And with the idea that, well, if it's popular, you develop it into a movie or a TV show, but that never happens. But that actually did this time. But it's a long story how it was going to be a movie. We got it. The script was written by a wonderful guy named Joel Church Cooper, great writer. We lost our financing 4 days before shooting, and then Joel and I, in Funny or Die, developed that into a television show. We reworked it to be a cable series.
So I'm wondering, Joel Church Cooper is now credited as the creator of the show, correct?
Correct.
And how much influence do you have on the character when he was developing the storylines to go for the season? I'm guessing for the future seasons as well. Do you collaborate on that in terms of where you see this character going, since you initially started off with this character?
I helped the movie that it was at first. I helped create the storyline for that. Joel wrote it and came up with most of that. I created the character and sort of the guidelines of the character, pardon me, over the years. But then Joel and a few writer friends of his that he hired were responsible for converting that into the television show and creating the whole first season. And we kind of basically followed the plot of the movie script we had written, just kind of expanded into 8 episodes with a very different act 3, a very different ending. And then Joel season 2 is already written. We're going to shoot it at the end of the year, and Joel entirely came up with that. It's been a surreal experience to have created a character and feel like only I know what he would sound like or be written as, and have Joel take it over and do it much better than I ever could.
So one of the things I love about the character you play, Jim Brockmire, is his true affinity for the game of baseball and what he brings to that. You know, we don't see many announcers like that who are, you know, the voices of a city when it comes to a sport, you know, like Harry Carey was for Chicago. Right. My old roommate was a Cubs fan, and, you know, she was kind of sad after the Cubs won the series because she's like, Harry's not around to appreciate this.
That's true.
Is baseball something that you have a passionate love for, or is there another sport that you like have that sort of passion for?
I love all sports. I'm a New York guy. I'm a Jets, Mets, and Knicks guy. I grew up loving the Mets and loving baseball and sports in general, broadcasters from that era, not just the Mets guys, which were Bob Murphy, Ralph Kiner, and Lindsey Nelson. Lindsey Nelson inspired Brockmire's jacket choice with his out there fashion sense. But the iconic voices back then, guys like Howard Cosell or Joe Garagiola, Tony Kubek, Kurt Gowdy. Not to mention the guys, you know, you mentioned like Harry Carey and Ernie Harwell and those guys, Red Barber. I found those voices I'm a voice guy. I key into that. And they made a big impression on me and combined my 2 major loves of mine, sports and the way people sound. You know, if you're interested in that, you're going to like baseball and football broadcasts and basketball broadcasts. Marv Albert, I spent a lot of my childhood. I preferred listening to Marv on the radio calling Knicks games and sort of acting out the Knick game with my Nerf hoop in my room than even watching it on TV.
It's so weird. I think it was just a couple months ago. I was watching my roommate was watching a basketball game, and Marv Albert was on as a commentator, and I was like, I didn't know he was still doing this. I thought he had been like forced into retirement or something.
He had been. I mean, much like Brockmire. I mean, he had disgraced himself, not quite in the way Jim Brockmire did, but he had some public difficulty. Got sent away for a while and made his way back, as Jim Brockmire hopes to do.
That's what we're hoping for. And I know I got to make sure not to say anything because I know the last 2 episodes haven't aired yet.
No spoilers now. Come on.
That's right. So I'm biting my tongue on this. One of the things that I love about Brockmire is that we don't really see anymore the idea of, I guess, quote, a high functioning alcoholic. We really don't see those anymore because we used to see a lot of those, but now with like how television has gone in this very, more gritty way, that's always like explored and they plumb the depths of it. But right. Brockmire is very secure in how he is. And so is Amanda Peet's character. She's also very much like that as well. And I was wondering, what led to the decision for Brockmire to be very secure in being that, and not have like redemption or sobriety be like this obvious end goal?
Well, to get you stumped me. I have an answer, but actually, there's so much I want to say. I don't know where to start. Getting back to Joel Church Cooper as a writer and how he envisioned it, in the sketch, in the short, Brockmire drank heavily, really just to justify freaking out on the air like that. I mean, how can you possibly have a professional guy lose it that bad unless he's in a blackout drunk? So, and granted, he walked in on his wife with other men, and that flipped him out. But so it really was just a comic premise. Joel Church Cooper, this kind of is a microcosm for the show. What I saw is just like an excuse to have some comedy. Joel took it literally and saw kind of the depth and reality of it and said, a guy like that is a real alcoholic. He may be high functioning and it may be an unsentimental and rather stark portrayal that has no particular interest in a redemption story, but the guy is an alcoholic and is probably only going to hook up with somebody who at least is going to be very understanding of that or be one herself. As Brockmire says to Julia James, we both seem to have the exact same level of functional alcoholism. You don't find that every day. So it speaks to what Joel saw in this and also what Tim Kirkby, our director, saw in this. They saw levels and layers in this that I did not, that I was fortunate enough to recognize when I read it off the page and was ready after 30 years as an actor to kind of bring that to it. I hope so anyway, but that's really a credit to Joel. He was a young writer at Funny or Die when this came. I had done the short without Joel. And then I was starting to do personal appearances, like going on Rich Eisen, going on the NFL Network and appearing as Jim Brockmire and talking about football that week. And Funny or Die, Mike Farrett, Funny or Die, said, can you do that? And I said, Mike, just have somebody write me a simple first draft of what I could say this week about the NFL. And I'll rewrite it. But I was busy shooting at the time. I said, I'll rewrite it, but just have somebody put something down on paper for me. And that was Joel's first thing he wrote for Brockmire, and it was so brilliant. It was so funny. I was like, who wrote this? I could never, right from the beginning, he wrote it much funnier, much more well-observed, and with an awareness of who the man was than I ever could. And he's been writing Brockmire ever since.
That's amazing, because I saw there's a great clip on YouTube for anyone who's watching who hasn't seen this, of you going to the press day for the Super Bowl as Jim Brockmire, and that was Joel Cooper Church's material.
Mostly, I mean, some of that was me messing around, but most of that was questions Joel had come up with to to ask these guys, and they really were just questions. They were, some of them were jokes in the form of a question, but yeah, and we freaked some people out that day. They weren't expecting. They didn't know what to make of me. They're like, I think I recognize that. Is that the Simpsons guy? Why is he talking like this? And why is he asking me bizarre questions?
That's the kind of thing I just love to watch, and you just watch everything ensue from there.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun for me too. It was a little nerve wracking. I'm not used to that kind of, Sacha Baron Cohen type assaultive comedy. That guy's another genius. He invented a new way to be funny. That guy.
But I mean, at the same time, it also has to be kind of intimidating, being around, especially pro athletes who I know if I sometimes like to do, like, I guess I would call it mini trolling of people, but like around that, people that are obviously bigger than me, I would probably not do. I would be too intimidated because I know they would break me in half.
Yeah, I honestly had a couple of scary moments, a couple of times where guys looked at me with anger, and I was a little frightened. And then they sort of collected themselves. But yeah, who was it? Golden Tate, the
Right.
then wide receiver for the Seahawks at the time. I said, there's actually an award at the Adult Film Awards called the Golden Taint. Are you familiar with that? And he did not find that funny.
I can't imagine why.
I know. I guess I can't blame him.
So actually, we're talking about, real life athletes and their reaction to this. One of the interesting things about the show is that you have several actual sports broadcasters come on the show and play different versions of themselves. I think probably the best is my personal favorite is Joe Buck. I think that's the one. I think that's coming up on tomorrow night's episode.
That is going to air this week. Yes.
Yeah.
Joe Buck's actually in the last two, but his main episode is the one coming up.
So I won't spoil anything about it, but one of the things I remember sometimes from being a big Simpsons fan and listening to the commentary, especially on episodes with big guest stars, was sometimes the guest stars just wouldn't get the humor, and it would be trying to get them at least to do the lines just for a voiceover was sometimes very difficult. Did you have anything like that with these guest stars, like not understanding the joke of how
or not being able
portrayed?
not be able to quite act it as well as you would like them to? We were worried about that, and we knew from the short. Joe Buck participated in the short, and we knew from that that he had chops. He was quite capable, but we gave him a lot to do in this episode. And again, Joel Cooper kind of designed all the scenes so that they were cuttable, so that if these guys were really bad, that we could sort of snip it out without losing too much story. And they were really all great. I mean, I'm not going to rank them, but Joe had the most to do. And I tell you something, we didn't know we would be able to get Joe Buck because his schedule was so difficult, because he literally calls every game in America. Mm-hmm. But if we couldn't get Joe, we were going to just cast it as kind of like a Joe Buck type. We're going to have an actor play somebody who's obviously supposed to be someone like Joe Buck. But honestly, Joe's so good. You'll see, Joe's so good in this. Oh, you've seen it already, I think.
I have. If people haven't,
right? The folks at home have not. We could not. A professional actor could not have done any better than Joe. So the more I realized, Joe actually is a professional actor. Joe is quite talented.
He was absolutely fantastic on that show, on that episode, and I think a lot of people are going to get a really big kick out of that, and I really hope that some of those clips go viral, because I think he's superb in playing this version of himself.
And his willingness to make fun of himself and to be aware that a lot of people don't like him and kind of play off of that. He's just comfortable in his skin, and it shows as an actor.
Yeah, if you could work on getting another person to do that to elevate some people's opinion of him, Chris Collinsworth could actually probably use that. I know some people that have issues with Chris Collinsworth. But,
I hear that a lot. I'm a very big sports fan. I hear a lot of backlash on Chris Collinsworth. Like, and I like hearing that a lot of people don't like Joe. In fact, they hate Joe. Shocked me because I'm like, I don't mean to be Pollyanna about it, and I don't know Chris Collinsworth, but I really admire. It takes a lot for a sports broadcaster to annoy me. Like if somebody really knows their stuff and is informative and smart, I just really enjoy that. Like why do people not like Chris Collinsworth? I know people feel that Joe is biased. Like if somebody watches him call a Yankees Red Sox game, the Red Sox fans will be convinced that he hates the Red Sox, and the Yankees fans are convinced that he doesn't like the Yankees. Some people feel that he's only doing it professionally, that doesn't really love the sport. I don't know. Like, why do people dislike Joe and Chris Collinsworth? Why do you not like Chris Collinsworth?
Well, it was actually my roommate, my old roommate, who's a very good friend of mine. Whenever we would have Sunday Night Football on, he was never a big fan of Chris Collinsworth, and every time Chris Collinsworth would say something that is like, it's just like sort of the nature of commentary of, you have to say something while this live event is going on in front of you. He'd say something that arguably probably isn't the best thing to say. It's not like it's off color or anything, but it's just sort of like completely obvious and redundant. And he would just always go under his breath, God, I hate Chris Collinsworth.
See, it's so funny. I watch a lot of Chris Collinsworth. I'm a big fan of that Sunday night game. I watch it almost every week. I don't care. To me, it just seems mostly informative. There are certain announcers. There's one particular in basketball, one particular who's not a football announcer anymore, but he used to be. There's a particular thing these guys do sometimes where after any given play, they'll hyperbolize based on that play. Like if a team does something right, they'll say, well, see, this is why this team is indomitable. And then if some little thing goes wrong, say, well, that's why this team or this player is in the tank. There's a couple of guys I can think of do that. And that used to drive me crazy, the guys I thought that did that.
Yeah.
But other than that, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying there was one, while watching March Madness this year, there was one announcer that very much did that with that very much. I had the same reaction with his commentary. Yes.
I don't know if I know what you're talking about. There's also sometimes guys who get are obviously a little past it. Sometimes, who are, it's kind of a young man's game and they're great announcers, but they're a little behind it. And sometimes that makes me uncomfortable too. Like, I wish I was listening to you from 10 years ago and not right now.
Definitely. And,
but we digress. We digress, my good friend. Yes, good.
But I have no problem with Joe Buck. I think he's a phenomenal. And once I realized how many sports he actually does, he broadcasts for, I was completely blown away because I only associated him with baseball. I didn't know that he also did football and everything else that Fox Sports has under the sun.
Oh yeah, he does it all, as we like to say in the business.
So one other thing, as I said, I'm a Simpsons fan, and a lot of my friends are Simpsons fans. So I have to ask one question about that, or else I'd be drawn and quartered by my friends.
Let's not have that happen. Go ahead. Yeah. Your life's at stake here. Yeah.
Depends on who you ask, but of the characters that you regularly voice, which one is your favorite one in terms of the lines that you get to deliver for that character?
In terms of the lines, that's a good question. I don't think in 30 years, 29 years, I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. That is a really tough one. Probably Mo, I would say. I really enjoy Mo's, homespun, colloquial, sort of working class, depressed poetry that he engages in sometimes. Mo's worldview, I think, is the most gratifying to act, to voice, to vocalize. The voice I enjoy doing the most is Professor Frank, just because it's so much fun to talk this way that once I start, I do find it difficult to stop. I fly nervy. And Duffman is the most difficult to do.
How come?
Vocally hard. Just because you do this. Hey, Duffman. I always have to record him last because he blows my voice out. You know what the writers say is the hardest character to write?
I'm thinking of Mr. Burns.
No.
Oh, which one?
It will surprise you.
Which one?
Ralph Wiggum.
You know, I can see that. I can see that because his specific lines are always so great.
Yeah.
And it has to take a lot of tries in order to get those.
Everyone has to be a gem. It's got to be really stupid and really brief. And the writers say it's almost like trying to come up with haiku. It's like really hard to write something that short and that stupid and that funny.
Yeah, me fail English. That's impossible. I mean,
Exactly.
I could never in 1,000 years think of that. And that is just so simple and brilliant and just gets the character down to a T.
My favorite Ralph Wiggum line is when he walks into the adult section of the comic book store. Remember what he says?
Oh, I'm blanking on that one right now.
You don't see him. You just see him walk in, and then you hear him go, "Everyone's hugging." Like that one. And the line they wouldn't permit, that standards and practices wouldn't allow through, but I bet now they probably would, but back then they wouldn't, is when he goes into that adult section, you hear him say, "She's hungry." They wouldn't allow that one.
So I just want to ask one last question here. So we are an awards website. You have an impressive history with in terms of Hollywood awards. You've won 6 Emmys.
I've won them all. Actually, no, I haven't.
Yeah, just your last one was last year for Ray Donovan, guest actor in a drama.
I did win that last year.
Yeah. What was it? What was that like? Was it any sort of a different experience winning it for a dramatic performance, as opposed to the ones that you won for voiceover?
Yes, that was actually I won for playing Mitch Albom in Tuesdays with Morrie, like whatever it was 15 years ago, which was also a dramatic role. I would say that that was a big thrill doing that with Jack Lemmon. This last year's Emmy meant a lot to me, not because I was counting on it or I was really it had a big lead up for me, but I really feel in the last 5 years that I have come to really enjoy my work and really, for lack of a better way to put it, feel like I really know what I'm doing. And I have a good balance of enjoying it and being on top of it, but also kind of letting it go. And, I remember watching interviews when I was a young man with Gene Hackman, I think, and Paul Newman. And I remember them talking late in life, like when they're probably about my age now, early 50s, mid 50s. They're saying that, I remember Gene Hackman saying, "I just feel like I know what I'm doing." I remember marveling at that, like, God, you've been an incredible actor for so many years. How can that possibly be? But, film acting is its own weird, crazy craft, I have found. And it's very difficult to, like, in any given day of shooting, you have to do it, any scene, 10, 20, 30, 40 times in a row. It's a crazy, weird Zen exercise in keeping something fresh for yourself. And I found it's nuts making. It's like very obsessive and weird. And I just feel like in the last few years, I've found a way to enjoy it and really do my best work. So I was very gratified by that last Emmy because of that.
And if you were to get nominated for Brockmire, which I think is a real possibility.
Now, don't jinx me now. Come on. That's, that's baseball superstition is at play. Now you have to like spin your head around or something 3 times to take the curse off.
I'm from the DC area. We screw everything up at this point. So, and we might big time tomorrow night. You never know. Do you have an idea of which episode you think you would want to submit if you were nominated?
I did think about this, and it turns out that for lead actor, you don't need to pick an episode. They go by your whole.
For comedy, for series, yes, you do. Not for movie miniseries, but series. All of them select episodes.
No, I was told that I did not have to do that. That it's actually your entire body of work that speaks, and not one particular one. But if I had to pick, I would probably go with the season finale.
The season
and
finale?
I'm going to look into this right away and see if I do have to pick. I wonder if because for only 8 episodes, I don't think it would be considered as a miniseries. I think it's still considered a comedy series.
I think the threshold is 6 episodes, so you would be considered a series.
Oh, I better look into this because I might have been given some bad information. I'd go with the finale though if I had to pick one.
That's a really good one. I won't say anything about that since it hasn't aired yet, but I also think the pilot's a really good one. That opening scene, with you, I love that scene. I've watched it like 5 times because I love it so much.
Give me some advice. If you were me, which one would you submit?
I think the pilot is probably one of the best ones because there's no there's no having to explain it further. It's all going right there. And also that opening bit can just really be a clincher. And that's what helped Jeff Daniels win a couple of years ago for the Newsroom. He submitted the pilot of that show where he has that great big speech, that like 3-minute speech about why America is the greatest country in the world, saying all that, that great Sorkin dialogue.
Right. Maybe you're right. It's good we spoke. This might really be helping me out.
But they're both very good. And I also like the road trip episode because I love it when you realize that you snorted the abortion pill. That's
my favorite episode overall. Like if we were to submit one for just the series, I would go with that one. I'd certainly go with that one for Amanda.
Yeah, Amanda's great in that one.
Yeah. But all right, I appreciate that. I should poll my Twitter followers on what they feel Jim Brockmire should submit.
And if you win, you have to accept it as Brockmire and just see if anybody gets it.
There'll definitely be at least a line or two from Jim Brockmire, should I be fortunate enough to be in that circumstance.
Well, Hank, thank you so much for this. This has been such a pleasure for us. Brockmire airs Wednesdays at 10 o'clock, correct? Not 10 o'clock, correct?
That is correct. And for the finale, they'll be marathoning the first 7 leading up to it, and along with the final 8th episode, and they'll be showing them all unbleeped.
Oh, fantastic.
And season 2 will be all no bleeps either.
Oh, that's even better. I love that.
Yeah.
So on IFC, great channel. Thank you so much for talking with us, and best of luck with everything that comes up for Brockmire.
Thank you so much.